11. Just find the page. 389.
King's College.
On 389 members. Thank you. We have got two proposed private plan changes here, members. We have John from Plans and Places, our GM at Plans and Places, John Dogood, and Nicholas Lau, a planner, to report to us on the first, which is it involves King's College land and land on Hospital Road at Otahuhu. John, you've reflected the very important questions that need to be asked of us in the report. 6 key questions why we should be considering a private plan change in such close proximity to confirming, which is almost all of the unitary plan. Can we have your report here orally today in support of the written?
All right, so for this particular private plan change request, I guess one of the key reasons for recommending to accept the plan change and allow it to go through the process of submissions and a hearing is that the matter was not specifically considered by the independent hearings panel. At that time, King's College had no particular interest in acquiring new land adjacent to the current school or divesting themselves of some of the existing sites. So it's all about rationalising the school grounds to make the school more confined within a more usable area. Part of the school campus is disconnected, as you'll see from the aerial photograph on page 391 of the agenda. The portion to the northeast, top right-hand corner, is the portion that the school now feels is better to be sold on. And they've acquired some land in the southeastern corner to keep the overall area roughly the same, slight reduction in overall area, but a more usable site. So this whole discussion didn't take place during the unitary plan hearings. It wasn't something that the school themselves at that point in time had concluded was the best way forward. So for that reason and the fact that it meets the other statutory tests, we are recommending that the council accepts this private plan change request. We're still in the 2-year period from operative. So we're 1 year in, 1 more year to go where it's a lot easier for the council to reject a private plan change request, particularly if it's been heard by the independent hearings panel. But for this one, we're saying it wasn't really considered by the hearings panel, so we do support it. But any more specific questions, Nick Lau, our principal planner, I'm sure can answer those.
Okay, members, it's moved by Councillor Filipaina. Do I have a second?
I'm happy to second.
Councillor Fletcher, thank you. Questions, members?
We used to beat them in football, so...
Are there any questions at all? Okay, members, you heard in John's introduction, I think we need to be careful with these private plan changes, considering that the unitary plan is very recent. In fact, it's not quite landed in full. We're probably about 95% confirmed with the unitary plan. But as I expressed some concern with staff when I first saw this report. You will remember that we actually passed a motion that there needed to be significant, I think the words were significant reasons, John?
Yeah, something of that nature.
Yep. I've personally examined this and I've asked the staff to examine this very, very closely because I don't want to establish a precedent here. I think it's very important that we don't establish precedent. So first, John, there is no precedent established here if we were to accept this for processing.
Well, there's always a precedent, but it's not an adverse or a negative precedent for the council. The precedent is simply that this was a matter that wasn't specifically considered by the panel. So,
and that's the key. Yeah. That's the key answer, members. That this is not a relitigation of something that might have been before in the earlier process. This is a new situation, and it's an opportunity to swap some land. So I will be lending my support and recommending that we do offer support here today in your vote for the motions before us. Is there anything else members would like to add? Councillor Watson.
No, just a question in terms of precedent. Then obviously in any other circumstance where there's something that wasn't before the unitary plan, where there is an issue such as this or different, then that will be eligible for a plan change in the same way. So there's nothing particularly remarkable about this plan change, is there, other than an issue has come up that the owners wish to address?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, or through the Chair rather, yeah, we could have similar examples over the next 12 months before we're through that 2-year period, and we would default to the tests as in the Act as set out in the report, where there's quite a clear structure under the RMA for testing things like, is it contrary to sound planning or resource management practice? If it meets that gateway test, you know, is it contrary to various parts of the RMA as a whole? So, yeah, there are some strict tests, but anything would have to be assessed against those, and those provide the safeguards for things that are clearly, they may not be re-litigation, but they are contrary to good practice. So, yeah.
Members, those tests, for your benefit, are outlined, 6 key tests on pages 395 and 396 through to the early part of 397. You ready for me to put that motion then?
Yes.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Thank you, Nicholas and John.
Well done, Jack.
Yeah, very well done. Always tough. We've got a second private plan change that's reported to us on 12.
Geez, I hope that's not a precedent.
Item 12.
No, that was set the last item.
Right, now the precedent has been set.
Supporting John is Roger Eccles, our planner. Welcome, Roger. And again, same key questions have been put, and you can see those being recorded in the written report, members. The recommendation from the staff is to accept. Do I have a mover for this? This is out in the Ellerslie area. I'll move then.
I'll second.
Do I have a second in Councillor Simpson? Thank you. John.
I think we'll just take any questions that
I think
the committee may have.
Yes, the same, in part, reasons apply. Anything?
Yeah, I can add slightly to it. So, again, the matter wasn't specifically considered by the panel, although the zoning of this portion of Great South Road was before the panel, and the applicant for this private plan change request did make a submission seeking a change in zoning, but as you'll see in the report, and hopefully it's in the reasons outlined on the screen up there, probably the key one is number A4, recommendation A4, up on the screen. Really, the constraints of developing this particular parcel of land were not subject to specific submissions or evidence before the panel. So, in the previous report, the zoning issue wasn't discussed at all. In this case, there was some discussion before the panel, but there was no discussion around the constraints that would arise from the zoning that's in the unitary plan right now. So it is a little bit slightly different, but again, we think that this one does have a unique characteristic that would distinguish itself from anyone trying to fully litigate things heard by the panel.
Thank you, John. Questions, members? There being none, I'll move. It's moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare that carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger, for your work there.
Thank you.